need tools like a calculator and an assembler. Okay, instead of creating different pop-ups that in the end you have moving around, I just decided to put these quickly accessible in a sidebar that you could show and hide with a key combination or with a button on the corner. You just have them. Every time the program wanted to tell you something, the notifications were there. So you just needed to go there. I mean, it's quite common now, Windows 10, OS X, even Linux, they all have these kind of interfaces. And quick settings, things that affected globally to the user interface, they were also found down there in the right. Like, for example, there's a web server that you can start, and other users can connect to this using a web interface, so you can do some collaborative reverse engineering, right? You can start and stop the web server over there, and you will get a notification, everybody connected. And you knew that was somebody connected, right? So the thing is that since EITO was moved into Qatar, the code quality has improved like 1,000%. The stability has improved like 2,000%. Okay, the graphs, yes, have improved like 10,000 because they are no longer HTML, they're proper Qt and whatnot. But the thing is, that's great because it makes the program more stable. But the reality is that I still get requests every single day from real reversers, and I know a bunch of them, asking me for EITO installers and binaries, new versions, updated versions, because I still keep EITO for myself with all these features that I showed you and now are gone, okay, plus the stability of Qatar. So what was the point of removing all those features? You just turn a user interface into a CLI inside a window. Now, what's the reason behind that? Same developers that are developing Radare are influencing, let's say, the development of Qatar. So people that it feels more comfortable with the terminal are designing a user interface, and there is nobody with UI or UX experience or knowledge involved into that. So the stabilization and quality of the code improvement is great, but the thing is that they are not targeting the real users. So we see the pattern, the problem here, right? There is something to be fixed here. The developers, okay, the problem here is that developers are not designers. That's good. That's the way it has to be. But a project like this must have designers, okay? And the priorities when developing a user interface are completely different than the priorities when you are developing the core, the functionality. And that should be split and separated. One should take care of functionality stabilization, so the analysis of Radar is good, the quality of the output is good, but another team must completely independently focus on the design. And that team must include people that know about these kind of things. Okay, that was pretty much the message that I had for today. I don't know how long it took the talk, but the message here today is not for you, but the problem we have with open source is that it's ugly, unusable, and we are losing not customers, but users because of that. And that's been like that for a long time. And that's it. Now questions, or I just go for another coffee. So, thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. It's just that when you choose the way the user is going to interact with the program, okay, you are bound to a different approach. If you decide to use a CLI, then it's going to work in one way. And everybody that works with CLI and likes command line interfaces, they're going to be extremely happy like that. For example, me, I love Radare CLI. I really love it. Okay, I don't agree actually with that graph that everybody is making fun of. But if you decide to go for a UI, GTK, Qt, HTML5, whatever, then the rules are different, and you have to use them, or it's not going to be a success. That's pretty much it. No more questions? Can I go for coffee?
Maybe I can ask one myself.
Yeah.
Do you have, if you don't mind, do you have any relationships with packagers or distributions which ship your software?
Yeah, actually, for Inguma, for Boken, and for the beginning of EITO, I was working together with a friend of mine that and it's been for a long time Debian maintainer of many programs. So he was actually doing the packaging of all these programs for Debian. And actually one of the reasons I switched to C++ Qt was the nightmare was for him to properly package something like with all these weird dependencies. It was much easier, even for Windows and OS X. Let's be honest, they may not be open source operating systems, but they do feed themselves from open source software, right? So you also need to target them. And reversing, for example, is mainly still Windows territory, right? So you need it to be on Windows.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Is Cutter used for something else than Radare?
And you mean the backend? No. Cutter is, right now, nowadays, it's like the official user interface for Radare 2, which is great because over the time Radare had like 6 attempts of different user interface, 2 of them web, another one GTK, another one Bala, something. None of them really got the focus. So now all those have like been forgotten on behalf of Qt. So all the efforts are right now in one interface, which is a really nice one. It's usable. It's much better for a user than the command line interface. But well, I still think that it needs this touch of a designer. You have another one over there.
It's kind of a comment about adding GUIs to technical problems. So like with Radar, it's quite, it has a reputation for being quite difficult in terms of the archaic commands. And trying to put a GUI on top of it is a difficult problem in itself. And then on top of that, to make a GUI that's kind of user-friendly and welcoming for newcomers, it's a different set of problems on top. So do you think that maybe it's not the case that it's about user interfaces, but trying to avoid like trying to spoon feed and be organized so that it's very easy to kind of get on board? And sorry, there's some very funny noises outside. So like, my example is like, for example, in Mac OS, the disk utility, which you use for like partitioning, was essentially a front end for fdisk. And over the many generations, to make things simpler, the tool has just been butchered into, you can maybe create a GPT partition that you can install HSFS onto, but you can't do much else with it. But it's very welcoming for a new user to kind of, you know.
Yeah, it is. First of all, I don't agree that Radare command line interface is difficult. You just, actually it's powerful, but it could be also really nice and easy. You just need to write down a small config file, and you don't even need, there's a lot of people sharing their own config file, and then you go straight into visual mode, and it's really easy, and it's really beautiful, and it's really... Now, I'm not a developer itself. I every now and then program things. It's not the same, so I by no means a professional developer. You just take a look at the source code of my applications, you will see. But I understand that there is this, this programming approach that it's separating the visual and the functionality, okay? You use that, and then you can have the functionality, and you can have a CLI, and you can have a GUI, or a graphical user interface. And that's it. That's all you need. I would say that it's the best approach. You develop a tool, develop it on the command line interface, it's great. Just try to separate these two different representation and the functionality layers, and then at any moment everybody can just create, or yourself, you can create the user interface, and that's it. The fact that user interfaces usually limit what the user can do with the program, like the example you put with OS X disk utility, that is true, but it doesn't have to. It's true because by default, usually when people create a user interface, in order to make it simple for the user, they remove freedom to the user. That's true, but it doesn't have to be like that. You can still allow the user to do all the things that they can do, even scripting and any other stuff. You just need to include that functionality in the user interface. So but sadly, it's true. Okay.
Coming back to Petras and your point, Also, partitioning tools that are on the command line can have very different and welcoming or unwelcoming interfaces. Like the BSD fdisk has two modes. One where you have sort of a shell type of thing, where you type single letter commands, and they have to be single letter, and you have to memorize them. And then the second mode where you essentially get a dump of the thing and as a text file and edit that in an editor. And if you just want to, like, you know, increase the partition size or something, you have to do the math in your head or with a good calculator, like count the number of sectors, and like these, you know, the numbers are very large and unwieldy.
Mm-hmm.
And then compare that to, if you ever, have you ever used the GPT command line tool? It goes like, GPT create 200 megabytes, and just does it. Like, the command line or GUI, I think the point I'm trying to make is not perhaps the big differentiator. You can create usable or unusable user interfaces in both.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Take a look at the screen again to this. That's the advanced mode for Cutter to allow you to decide how to analyze the binary. All this information between brackets is the commands Radar is using. I don't see the point of having this on the user interface, but it allows us to see here how the Radar commands look like. Okay? I'm sorry, but if you open Radar, a binary, and you want to analyze it, then first you need to read, understand, and experiment with all these options and try to see which one is matching for you. AA, AAR, AAC, AAB, AAN, and then you want to change the configuration, and well, it's also quite complex. So now, does Radare has another way of doing that on the command line interface? Yes, it does. You don't need to know this in the CLI to actually be able to use that. I would say that Radare right now in the CLI itself has like two modes of operation, one that is much more user-friendly and one that is still hardcore. Now, it should be announced clearly on the Radare website. If you find this intimidating, just do this and this step, and immediately you will find yourself in a much more comfortable and friendly environment, if that's what you're looking for. It's kind of hidden, but the visual mode allows you to do all these kind of things with interactive, well-explained, humanly readable instructions, let's say. Okay? So yeah, I agree. Both user interfaces, graphical user interfaces, and command line ones, they can be either horrible or really, really friendly. It depends on the developer. Yep.
All right, any more questions? Yes.
This is more of a recommendation. If this is the latest version, you're missing the reset to default option.
Reset to default, you have it, or at least in IATO you used to have it on the user interface, all these moving panels. The first 10 times you used you eventually messed up, so there was a reset layout one thingy. And here, not in this one, but here you can see, now, you see this slider over there? You could move from different analysis levels, which were like straight, there was no additional information, or you could go all the way up to the advanced. In the advanced, you just are on this Wild Wild West, and either you know what you're doing or you just select another of the pre-configured ones. So it was doable, but I still, well, it was mainly it's not appealing.
Thank you. Any more questions? Then apparently not. And to conclude, I can maybe advertise for Pancake's own conference or Radare's conference, R2Con, in September.
Yeah,
in Barcelona.
It's a great reverse engineering conference in Barcelona. It's the third edition right now, I think.
Yes.
And it's like this, community organized. It's excellent. You're gonna get the latest information about Radare, about the user interface, and just practical examples, tons of practical examples on how to use that tool to pretty much reverse engineering anything. So you got the chance. Barcelona in that season, it's lovely. It's a great city. The community is awesome. Just go there. I won't be able, but well, as I said, I'm leaving Berlin, so I'm going to be quite busy in the next months. But just go there. It's excellent.
Yeah. So hi, Pancake. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
And thank you.
Don't hate me for this. I'm trying to help, really. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Hugo.
Welcome.
Yep. So I don't know exactly what time it is. I guess we can take a small break now until the next talk. And I have some good news. We got now paper cups. I think we have 15 minutes. I can boil some water too. And yes, and let me know if there is anything else. Thank you. Microphone 3, yes, you can hear me. So there is a stream address on Twitter. Unfortunately, we have some technical issues to keep track of the changing addresses. And of course, if I say this now to someone who cannot connect to the stream, he will not or she will not hear it. But we are about to start Yuri now. The NetBSD, no, the packet source Twitter feed should have at least the page with the live stream. And then we can try to update it as we see it break and try to fix it at the same time. So Yuri,
Okay.
can you speak?
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay. Cool.
So since we are a few minutes late, Yuri, go ahead.
So, as Corbin says, I'm Yuri. I'm going to tell you to talk to you about desktops in package source. It's just an overview of what we have, what we'd like to have, and just perhaps some of you don't know about this. I'm from Belgium. I've been a developer for about 3 years, but sometimes you'll see me disappear for 6 months, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, because I'm still studying computer science in Belgium. I mostly work in package source because that's what I can do. And right from the start, my work was about desktops because I was trying to make NetBSD more interesting for newcomers. As a noob myself, when I went to a new operating system, when I was at first distro hopping, between Linux distributions, the first thing that I would check is the user interfaces, and then of course. When I learned the command line interface, it wasn't really a problem anymore, but I still want to make it more interesting for newcomers. But I will try to make this talk more about package source, of course, because this is package source con, not NetBSD-Con. I just want to make clear that I'm going to talk about desktop environments, not window managers. I know many of you probably use just a window manager because it's what advanced users usually do. That's what I did myself. Like Hugo says, I'm doing this for the users, not for myself, because usually I'm more of a command line guy, but desktops are pretty nice, so I end up using them. As I said, NetBSD is my main target, because that's what I use on home when I'm not on traveling on the laptop. But Illumos distributions like SmartOS, Illumos, and now Triblix should be supported pretty well, thanks to Jonathan Perkin. Okay, this is also my first talk, so if I'm nervous, it's normal. And don't hesitate to interrupt and ask questions during my talk. The main supported desktops we have are XFC, Mate, LXD, KDE, Defora. And I'm not going to talk much about GNOME 2 because we're supposed to be removing it soon because it's old and GNOME 3 is around the corner in package source. Hopefully. Yeah, I'm going to try to start working on that, but it's a really, really, really huge work. XFC 4.12 is GTK3 based. That's pretty recent. It's around 70 packages with all. We support pretty much all of the plugins and everything that XFC has to offer. It's pretty good. It's usually the main shows of people that use BSD. You'll see it on OpenBSD, FreeBSD, NetBSD, of course, all the Linux distributions. It's really stable. It doesn't change much. The interface stays the same. The only big change that happened was the move to GTK3. And that was the last release. So they're still pretty conservative, but it does have modern features like screen scaling, so it works fine on modern hardware. It's also highly portable. One of the main developers is also an OpenBSD developer, so that's pretty cool. And they accept the patches for pretty much any OS. That's what it looks like. That's my desktop as of like 2 years ago. It's actually the main picture that you'll see on the Wikipedia NetBSD page. So just an overview of what we have. Mate 1.20, that's a more recent package in the package source. It's the spiritual GNOME 2 successor. It very much feels like it, but no, it's GTK3. So it used to be GTK2, and last release, most of the components are now GTK3. It's really lighter to build, but it feels similar. It's just the same type of desktop. It's around half of the packages in package row, so that's pretty nice, much easier to maintain. And that's what it looks like on a Pinebook, an ARM laptop that Jared McNeil has been working on. LXDE is a GTK2 based desktop, and I think it will stay on GTK2. It's really light, not many dependencies, and it's what you will usually see on Linux distributions for embedded hardware or Raspberry Pis on system on chip kind of stuff. It looks like this. That's one of my screenshots on NetBSD. As you can see, it still feels similar to Mate or XFCE, but really it's much, much lighter and it's pretty fast. But it doesn't really contain much tools as a desktop compared to XFCE or Mate. KDE4 is not a desktop I've used a lot. I've built it one time and used it one time, but it's really slow. Well, for my usage, it was pretty slow. It's Qt4 based, and it looks pretty fancy. I think Mark Davies, another package source developer, is working on getting KDE5 working, which would be nice because it's a really good looking desktop and it has lots of features. Defora. So Defora is a software that Coben, our organizer, is working on. It's a full feature OS, but the part I'm working on, going to talk about is his desktop environment. It's GTK3 based. It's really nice. The code base is really small, as expected from a good NetBSD developer. It's really easy to extend. Of course, Coben is a NetBSD developer, so you can expect NetBSD to be the first platform to always work on Defora. He does also work on mobile, which is really good. He made a talk, Touch on NetBSD 2012, that I recommend. That's what it looks like on a typical desktop. It doesn't have a window manager yet, so we use, I don't know which one on this screenshot, but as you can see, it has a panel and a bunch of software. On the mobile, that's what it looks like. I think it made it work on the Nokia N900 at some point. So the desktop environment that we are working on currently and that are mostly available in work in progress is Cinnamon. Cinnamon is a desktop from Linux Mint. It's really nice, really fancy, but it's pretty difficult to work on because, well, I don't think it's ever been used outside of Linux. Lots of parts are Linux only, lots of parts run on Python and JavaScript. Most of it needs a JavaScript interpreter, which is fine if you use NetBSD MD64 because it works there. But if you try to use ARM or if you try to use anything else, nothing works because the JavaScript interpreter isn't ported yet. So that's available in work in progress. And that's what it looks like. So it's very fancy. And with graphical acceleration, it should work. So it's targeted at NetBSD people who run on AMD64 and really powerful hardware. I realize that not really a lot of people, but as it is available in WIP, it should probably work on pretty much any other platform, Linux, whatever, which usually is a bit smoother with graphics. LXQT, that's also a work in progress, but I tried to import it before this talk, but I had an issue building Qt5 in NetBSD 8, so I wasn't really able to finish that. But basically, it's like LXDE, so really nice, not many tools, and it uses Qt5, which is really good looking. So if you have Qt5 for Wireshark or any other application, I recommend LXQT if you want a small desktop. It looks like this. So GNOME 3, that's what I am hoping to be working on in the following month. It's probably the most popular desktop. I think Ubuntu now uses it. They went back from Unity. It uses GTK3. It's reasonably portable too, because one of the main I don't think it's the main developer, but one of the developers of GNOME 3 is also an OpenBSD developer, which is good. Still, there are some systemd related parts that need to be ported. lots of stuff will be disabled. I took a look at the OpenBSD port for file system support, and they disabled most of the options that the virtual file system for GNOME uses. So that's something that to work on. It's probably going to be about 150 packages to maintain, so that's really big. So I probably won't be able to do it alone. Thankfully, lots of the core components are already available in package source, so that's pretty good. I think Patrick Welsh worked on most of these, so now I can get started doing most of the main parts of the desktop itself, because it has a lot of dependencies. It's available in OpenBSD and FreeBSD, not the same version, but so there's a reference to look. So if anyone wants to help with that, of course. It looks like this. So it isn't really nicer, I think, than Cinnamon or even XFCE, but for some reason, it's the most popular solution available. I tried it on OpenBSD recently, and it was really, really slow for me. I don't know if it has a problem. It was a problem with graphical acceleration, but it wasn't really a good experience. Bonus desktop environment, if some of you are nostalgic, the common desktop environment is also available in work in progress. I haven't really tested it, because I don't really like how it looks, but I know that some of you have used it when you were younger. It looks like this. Maybe some of you have an idea which desktop I should work on maybe later. There's Enlightenment, a recent version that looks great, but looks difficult to work on to port, especially in NetBSD. Lumina from a PCBSD developer. I don't know if that's still maintained. Do you guys know of any other desktop that's popular right now? No? So hardware support, of course, most of the desktop build on Linux, so that's fine, and all the options should be enabled for Linux. NetBSD lacks a few features for really basic stuff, really, like auto mounting, network Bluetooth configuration, which is something I hope to be working on too. Power management is incomplete. There's some UPower support, but stuff like lead switch detection doesn't work yet. That's really a NetBSD issue, but lots of hardware doesn't support suspense. We don't support Hibernate either, which is expected of a good desktop, so I hope that we can work on that. Also, probably going to need a lot of help on this. OS support, NetBSD my main target, so I'm always going to build it first on there, but thanks to Jonathan Perkin, usually Sonos follows really quickly. One desktop that should work on pretty much all the BSDs and Linux and whatever is XFCE, because I made sure, but no, I don't really have time, since I'm maintaining multiple desktops, to actually go back and install Dragonfly BSD, install FreeBSD, install OpenBSD, install a Linux distribution, and try every time. So I'm really happy if someone does that and reports. Also a really important part of the desktop is logging managers. We have XDM in NetBSD, but package source are JDM2. JDM3 should follow soon. Slim, a really recent addition that I made, which looks really good. Really simple logging manager, and also LightDM, which I hope to import in the next month. LightDM can look like this. We actually have these themes in package source already. So if you're looking to make some sort of a NetBSD-based product or whatever based product, you can have a nice logging manager. So also to have a good desktop, you need good software, and we are pretty much good on that. Package source has LibreOffice for documents, MPV, Rhythmbox, which has been added recently, which is really a really nice audio player. We have transmission for torrent. We have GIMP for image edition. For the IDEs, we have a really old IntelliJ version, but it's really easy to update. It's usually a single jar file. It runs on Java. But the memory requirements are so big, I can't really test it on my hardware. Jared McNeil has a pretty good NetBSD workstation. He told me that it works, but you have to tweak the JVM to use something like 2 gigs of RAM at least. We also have Firefox, and I hope to have Chromium working. I know it's a really, really, really big work that Maya has worked on a bit. And I hope that we can get it to working at some point. and hopefully we can also get some gaming stuff in the future, like Steam. For NetBSD, it's an issue because we don't really support Wine on 64 bits that Steam needs. Yeah, if you want to contribute, you'll find that, especially if you're working in GNOME, the list of dependencies gets really, really huge. So I took a server from my basement that my parents don't really use anymore, and put NetBSD 8 and have it continuously build packages, so that at the same time it's nice for pretty much every other packages developer, because you can have bulk results pretty much every hour, and so you can test after you've committed if something not broken. So as a conclusion, I'll say that working on desktops is pretty cool. Even if the work is repetitive, I like it a lot because users usually get back and say, thank you for doing this stuff. I used to use whatever, Cinnamons on Linux, and I'm happy that I can now use it on NetBSD. So that's pretty nice. Also, it's really important to actually use this when you've done packaging it. That's really a problem I have, because I usually work on package stores for a few months and then get back to school and then forget about it, use my Mac because that's the laptop I have. And usually when I get back to NetBSD or whatever, or using package stores, I realize that some stuff is broken that nobody really reported. And so, yeah, what I do now is take 1 week with the desktop, then switch. Yeah, so if you have issues, even some issues that sound really non-technical, don't hesitate to send problem reports. I know that Martin Huseman, NetBSD developer, does. Every time I make an update on XFCE, he will submit like 20 bug reports, which is really helpful, really nice. Sometimes it's really a non-technical issue and it's closed in 5 minutes, but usually it really helps. So that's a desktop I found on the NetBSD archives. So that's what it used to look like. But now we can actually have pretty desktops. Yeah, 1.4. So that's pretty old. I don't know how old. 15 years old, maybe? So do you have any questions? Corbin, can you have the mic? Oh, sorry.
In terms of times, how long does it actually take to do like a full build of GNOME and things like that?
Oh, actually pretty long. Recently, it's been really shortened because some desktops require some software like GTK-doc, which requires Boost just to build some documentation. So now I've managed to disable that for most of the desktops, so it's pretty short. Also, GNU TLS used to depend on Guile, which is a build that will take a few hours for actually pretty small software. So yeah, no, XFCE, I think, if you if you build all the dependencies, so from scratch, on my hardware, it's almost a day. But I don't really have a really fast hardware for NetBSD. But dependencies are not that big. Yep.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
So the authors, how receptive are they for accepting patches for NetBSD or other OSs? Is it easy to feedback or?
Yeah, I haven't really submitted my XFCE patches yet, which is really something I should do. But most of the time, they're really accepting. One desktop I've found that are not really welcoming to BSD patches are Cinnamon, because they're Linux Mint guys. They have no idea usually what I'm asking and why I want to do something and use ConsoleKit instead of systemd for something. They'll just say, why? So yeah, that sucks, but it's package rule, so we can have patches. But for XFCE and GNOME, as I said, they are OpenBSD developers and they are really open to NetBSD patches.
More questions? Yes.
So when you have the things with a big list of dependencies, how many of these desktop environments can you actually cut down that list of dependencies? If you don't want a, I don't know, inbuilt web browser or something, how many of these can you actually cut down so it's much smaller, or do they generally require absolutely everything, and it'll break if you try and remove a component?
LXDE is actually pretty small because it only requires GTK2, which doesn't have many dependencies, so LXDE is fine. With Mate and XFCE, you'll always find you have a lot of dependencies, and it's pretty much all required. I try to strip it down to the most essential, but yeah, even for XFCE, which is supposed to be a bit more conservative, you still end up having about 300 packages built to have the desktop. So it's huge, I get it, but yeah, I don't really have a choice. So yeah, if you have a system on cheap hardware or older hardware, I don't even recommend using any of these. Maybe just use CTWM that we have in NetBSD now, if you're a NetBSD guy, or maybe just an TWM with a bunch of X terms. But yeah, the desktop experience is usually pretty heavy.
And also, I think you alluded to this, a lot of these things often depend on some sort of hardware extraction layer or something, and are you doing any work on that, or are you? I know Jared seems to do a lot on that.
The issue is that it's really a really fast-moving target. We have some HAL work done for NetBSD a few years ago, but now it's mostly moving to systemd with some console kit work, but it's really moving fast on Linux, so the desktops have to adapt. And if I'm doing work for NetBSD, for example, to abstract disk usage, I'm not sure that in 2 years it will still work. So yeah, it's really, for the moment, as in FreeBSD and OpenBSD, it's mostly all disabled, the support for hardware abstraction, but it will be really interesting to actually have support for this, for GVFS and stuff like that.
If I wanted to help to make GNOME 3 happen, is there a list of things that are missing?
If you want to help, there's already some work in WIP. There's a meta package already.
Okay.
So what I would do is just update the stuff that we have, because the GNOME 3 is also a really fast-moving target. There's releases every other week. And so what I would like to do is take one version and then make it work properly. But by the time we finish basic GNOME 3 stuff, there's probably going to be 5 or 6 releases, minor releases out.
Okay.
So yeah, just update what we have in WIP and import as quickly as we can.
Sounds good.
Thank you. More questions? No more questions from you guys. Maybe I have a couple of comments. You mentioned IntelliJ, but as far as I know, Android Studio is built on the same kind of environment.
Yep.
So it would be nice to get Android Studio to work, which should be a bit lighter than IntelliJ itself.
Yeah, so JetBrains does IntelliJ, PHP Storm, WebStorm, RubyMine, Python something. So they have a lot of really nice ideas that I usually use for school. And most of it should work on NetBSD, since it's just a bunch of jars and you give it the path to the compiler or the interpreter that you need. So I was able to run recent IntelliJ not really well because of my memory limitations, but I was able also to use Scala on the IDE, so it should work.
I tried Android Studio, the Linux binaries, and I was hoping that with Linux emulation it would work, but I didn't get past the splash screen. And I got pretty much the same with Steam. I had to patch the installer quite a bit, and then I could begin to start it, but then it stopped there, and I was stuck with the, I think, a kernel bug or something missing with Linux emulation. Leo seems to agree. You want to comment on that?
I think that with Steam the issue is that we don't have proper support for 64-bit.
You don't need Wine. You don't need Wine for Steam. There is a Linux binary for it.
Okay.
Yeah, so we would need to improve the Linux simulation layer to get it to work, because you can run it on Debian or whatever your distribution you want on Linux.
Yeah, but then you don't get most of the games, I guess.
I think you get quite a few.
Okay.
On the topic of IntelliJ, I think ABS, David Brownlee, is using NetBSD for doing development with IntelliJ, so he might be worth pinging. Yeah.
Great. Anyone else? Then I think we should thank Yuri for his talk.
Thanks for listening.
We see us again at 12, very punctually for Schmontz, because he will have to go right after his talk. And I don't remember the topic. Yes, it's about maintaining Qmail in 2018, I believe. All right, see you in a bit. I'm being told we have a surprise talk by Jorg. So beginning actually right now, as soon as he's ready.